Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, friends, and welcome to session 72 of our Zoom in series, our virtual get together. Today's session is in partnership with Rose Walk Hospital. It's a luxury hospital for women. In the session today, we talk about the complex topic of nutrition. Food and nutrition are probably the two words we are most familiar with. But do we actually understand what they mean? There is so much information that we are often confused and perplexed. What advice should one listen to? What should one ignore? Clarifying some of these popular myths and explaining to us some of the common heroes of our kitchen, as our speaker today calls it, is Rashi
Chahel. Rashi Chahel.
Rashi Chahel. She is the head of nutrition, clinical nutrition at Rose Walk Hospital for Women. Welcome, Rashi. You are very young, and it's indeed a pleasure to have you on our Zoom in session this evening. Rashi has a master's in public health and nutrition. She is a certified childcare nutrition expert and has a certificate in Ayurveda nutrition too. She has been encouraging and guiding people towards a healthier lifestyle for over a decade. She is passionate about nutrition and a strong believer in the power of food. Rashi, we are delighted to welcome you.
Thank you so much.
You have a short video for us. Would you just like to give a small introduction? Maybe
Sanjana,
tell us a little bit. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you'll have to make me co-host.
Just 1 minute.
Yeah, just
Rashi,
give before she starts.
Yeah. Rashi, would you like to just give a short introduction about yourself and also tell us about the video which you will be sharing with us before we start that, and then we can discuss and listen to what you have to say to us. Over
Thank you
to
so
you,
much.
Rashi.
Thank you so much, Sanjana. Yes, surely. So I am a practicing clinical and therapeutic nutrition. I expertise in learning, my passion about believing that the food can be a healer, and there's so much of ancient wisdom that can be used in our modern kitchen, which we usually overlook. So this is the motto that I really practice upon, and I have over an experience of 14 years. I've been heading the department at Rose Walk for past 3 years. Before this, I was heading it in Paras Hospital, and before that, I was associated with Max Healthcare. And I've been part of a lot of smaller organizations, NGOs that work in promotion of women health and nutrition, and they work specifically in the underprivileged section. I have been I've been writing articles from quite some time, and I have had quite many published articles in a lot of magazines and newspapers over the past couple of years. Now, when I talk about nutrition, there is so much that we all hear, there is so much that we all read, and it kind of excites us. And then everybody starts questioning, am I doing enough? Am I doing it in the right way? Am I doing it in the wrong way? So I really want to talk more about what is really nutrition, what is that we call it as perfect nutrition, what is good nutrition, what is bad nutrition, and how do you really define it? So this is something that I would want to change people's opinion upon, that there is absolutely nothing called as good nutrition or bad nutrition. Every food that exists has been existing for a purpose, and we've been using, and actually we've grown so old using this kind of nutrition. Now suddenly we just cannot debar it from our life, but of course there are a lot of people who are allergic towards it. And then let's once we go through the after we've gone through this video, I'll be touching every aspect about it.
Wonderful. So let me just play the video for the viewers.
Sanjana, voice is not coming.
We can't hear anything.
Rashi, you're on mute.
Rashi, you are on mute.
Can you hear me now? Can
Yeah.
I just keep saying the recipe while he's making it? So basically he's using a grain called couscous. It's one of the millets. It is gluten free. And it's very easy for you to prep couscous. So all you have to do is just boil some water. And once you've boiled the water, switch off the gas, just soak in your couscous and drain the water. That's how little time it takes for you to prep couscous. Once couscous is ready, just drain it and keep it aside. You can use many vegetables. Here for this recipe, he's using cucumber, carrots, and bell peppers. You just need to slice them down and you can keep them together. Alongside that, he is using pomegranate reduce. Pomegranate reduce has been made by, when you take fresh pomegranate, you just juice it and take the juice. In a double boiler, add the juice. Alongside that, just add about hardly a teaspoon of honey and let it cook. Once it starts to coagulate and thickens, you just need to add a little bit of lemon juice, salt, and black pepper to it. So that's the reduce. You need to add very small amount. He's added very liberally, but technically you're supposed to just put a couple of drops on the salad. And he's made hunkered balls. Hunkered balls are made by, once you prepare the hunkered, you can just start rolling it. It becomes thick and it starts coagulating and it just kind of binds in together. And within the rolled balls, you can roll in the capsicum, the bell peppers. You can spice it up if you like it. I usually like them bland. It's the yogurt flavor that really makes this salad very nice. So this becomes more of a balanced meal, something that'll give you right amount of proteins, right amount of fibers, and the right amount of nutrition from the pomegranate that you would be requiring in this salad. So this is how he's preparing the salad. I think, Sanjana, we can also share this video in the group later once the session is over. So that way everybody else will also have the recipe.
We can do that later so that they can see the recipe. So I think you have explained and what he is doing. Let's stop the video and then you can tell us a bit more about what the chef was doing. Perhaps draw attention again to the fact of, how you make the reduce, how do you make the reduce pomegranate? Because I think that is something which would be useful, and pomegranate being such a good fruit, I mean, it's good to be able to use it as often as one can.
Exactly. So you can even store it. You can make this similar kind of reduce with other fruit juices also, especially orange and mandarin. It really comes out well. So how you're supposed to do it, you have to just juice out some fruit juice, like the whole fruit juice, remove the seeds and just take the juice. Take one vessel where you will add the juice. Then there will be some water and there'll be another vessel. So that's how you create a double boiler. Once you've created that, you'll keep boiling it and you can add about 1 teaspoon of, just like 1/10 of the proportion of the juice as honey, because you don't want that reduce to be extremely sweet. So once you add like 1/10 of the proportion of the juice, it'll start to thicken. You have to just keep cooking it at a low flame. And once it starts thickening, that is the time when you can add salt, black pepper, and a little bit of lemon juice and a little bit of olive oil, so that it gives that shiny texture. It kind of glazes. Beautiful. And you have to always use in very small quantities. So any reduce that you create, it is not to be used as like a normal chutney. It has to just come in a couple of drops so that it looks more prettier and it enhances the flavor of the main dish and not takes the flavor of it. So
Right.
that's one
Great.
thing that we must keep in mind. And since pomegranate is there in season, that is one reason why I chose this recipe, because anything that is available in the season is recommended. I strongly believe that, every season comes with certain number of vegetables and certain number of fruits, because it enhances the absorption of those nutrients in those particular regions. And we must encourage others also and ourselves to eat what is available in the season. One, because the economical cost is going to be less. It kind of motivates our local farmers to produce more of these things. And at the same time,
Right.
it is present with the right amount of nutrition. You'll always see that, all vitamin C rich fruits are always available to us at the change of weather. That is the time when our body is adjusting to a newer weather, and you need to strengthen your body. And you'll suddenly see that this is, especially in the rainy season, the skin becomes very dull and it starts to look a little darker. But in case if you're consuming right amount of vitamin C rich fruits or any other seasonal fruits, you will not feel that your skin is becoming dull. It'll stay hydrated, and it'll keep making it look very fresh and healthy. Now, talking about what is good health. Good health is just not the absence of a disease. It is a feeling of a well-being. Everybody wants to feel very good about themselves. Good health is achieved by the right kind of nutrition. Now, what is right nutrition? Everybody talks about this is good food, this is bad food. But in my opinion, there is nothing called as good food or bad food. Of course, you need to proportion it out in your diet. There are few foods that can be of smaller quantities in your diet, but there can be fewer foods that needs to be in the higher quantities. A healthier diet helps us maintain a well-being, your mental well-being, and improves your overall health. So, you should consume appropriate amount of all nutrients. When we talk about all nutrients, what are we really talking about is that you have to consume macronutrients. We've all heard about carbs, fats, proteins. These are our bigger blocks in our diet. Then we talk about vitamins and minerals that are needed in very small amounts, literally barely. Small amounts is like, the way we have chutneys on our main plate. That's how little we need it, because that is good enough for our body to digest it. Now, there are a wide variety of diets that can be included. It becomes very difficult, when I tell everybody that you should have carbs, you should have proteins, you should have fats, you should have vitamins and minerals. And everybody is like, we'll keep eating throughout the day. And it becomes very difficult for us to manage कि मैं एक रोटी के साथ दाल भी बनाऊं, सब्जी भी बनाऊं, salad भी cut करूं. So the best way to do it is that what we can do is you can use different kind of combinations. For example, if I come back to the recipe that I have just shared, it's a couscous salad. Couscous is a gluten-free, but it has quality carbs. It has a lot of fiber because of the millet, because of the grain itself has a lot of fiber. It has quality fat, it has good quality fat, and plus we sprinkle a little bit of olive oil just to make sure that we're not missing out on anything. We are adding hunkered balls so that we're enhancing the B vitamins and minerals in our recipe. So when we talk about these different kind of variations in your diet, you'll be able to make sure that you're getting best of everything in your diet. Now, how do
Many
we
people are becoming vegan and many people are vegetarians. So, it's important for them to have all the different elements of, a balanced meal.
Exactly. So for vegans, it becomes all the more challenging. For vegetarians these days, I don't see much of a challenge, but for vegans, to make sure that they get right amount of B vitamins is very essential. So they should really consume a lot of cashew nuts. That's a very good source of B vitamin for them, and all kind of nuts and seeds. And they should have double the helping of any normal person, because they'll be deprived of it because they're not consuming any dairy products, and they will not get B vitamins from anywhere else. And another thing that vegans should really keep in mind is that the water intake level has to be very good. That usually dips, and it kind of interferes in the absorption and optimization of utilization of the nutrients in your body. So that is why it is very important for them to keep up with water volumes also. Now, when we talk about check your health status, what is it that we're really talking about? It's about a self-assessment. Every one of us, we understand today we're looking leaner, tomorrow we're looking fatter. How do we really determine this? Either by your waist circumference going up, or you suddenly start feeling that my clothes are becoming extremely tight, or you start feeling very heavy, or you'll be short of breath, or you're feeling very bloated or congested in your day's routine. Whenever you're doing that, it is best for you to calculate your own BMI and see where exactly you are standing. As per WHO, the normal BMI is 18.5 to 25. But for Asians, because we are structured in a way, we usually like to keep a normal BMI to 23. What is BMI? Is basically your basal metabolic index, which can be calculated your weight upon height in meters square. And anything over 23 is considered as overweight for us. But for as per WHO standards, we go over 25. For us as Asians, we start calculating anything above 28 as obese. And for WHO standards, it is above 30. Now, there is certain amount of, these days, a lot of people come up to me, when they pull out their summaries from their gyms, that, this is the water volume I have in my body, this is the muscle mass I have in my body, this is my essential fat in my body. As soon as they read the fat levels, some of them get really surprised, and then they start doing various kind of diets. For an average woman, it is okay for them to have anything between 25 to 30% of body fat as fat. And for men, it is 18 to 24%. This is average fat. For athletes, it's going to be a little lesser. Whereas for fitness purpose, it is anything between 21 to 24 for women and 14 to 17% for men. Now, when we talk about simple tips for a healthy lifestyle, what is it that we're really referring to? The best balance is that, your good health is when you're in a good weight. Anybody who is on a higher weight, especially Asians, will have a lot of people who will be lower in their, or probably they'll be following in the right amount of BMI, but they're all apple shaped. Oh, sorry, they're all pear shaped. By pear shaped, they're leaner on the upper body, but they have belly fat, and they'll be leaner again on their legs. So on the lower part of their body. This is absolutely not a healthier structure. So anybody who is heavier on the lower abdomen towards their hips are those kind of people that we usually recommend that, they should really check in what they're eating, and they need to start exercising. Now, to maintain a healthy weight, not only diet is the right way, but of course, eating healthy is very important. But at the same time, being active is even much more important. There is no such diet that can give you results if you're not physically active enough. There are a lot of supplements that, your doctor might suggest you to have, or you probably would be consuming, like your multivitamins and other such things. But the absorption of those multivitamins will also only happen in the presence of, if you're actually working out. So your calcium and vitamin D will be absorbed in the presence of your sunlight. For that to get absorbed, you need a lot of calcium. For calcium to get absorbed, you need magnesium. So one thing is dependent on the other, and the best way to use it is by working out. And whatever your body uses, it's going to absorb it, and whatever the body does not require at that point of time is going to flush out. That can only happen if you're drinking enough water. Now, from so many years, we've all been hearing that, breakfast is the most important part of your day, and please do not skip it. A lot of people who start following intermittent fasting, they usually give up their breakfast. I do not recommend that to anybody. We've always been following a practice of intermittent fasting from later in the day till the next morning we were fasting. So you really do not require to punish your body a little more. Once you are up, your body needs little food. Do not overfeed your body, but your body requires small amount of food for it to start the day. Those little food can be anything between 200 to 300 calories, and one roti is equal to 100 calories. If you're stuffing it with any vegetables, you're almost going up to 2 to 115. Or even if you're not stuffing it so much, you're probably just putting a little bit of onions, you'll be still touching 200 calories with that, and you can just have like a half cup of yogurt along with it. That's it. That's how little your breakfast can be. And in case if you're all okay with the cereals, then 30 grams of any cereal, can be oat flakes, can be chocos, can be wheat bran flake, with 1 cup of cold coffee. That's how little your breakfast can be, followed by 1 fruit after some time. Now, breakfast eaters are usually considered as slimmer and much more active. Their brain, the left side of the brain is more active, and they're actually better performers. This is why you must not forget your breakfast. It is very important for us to bond with our breakfast. I don't know why we all usually believe that if we are skipping a breakfast, this is easy, but we can't skip our dinner. But actually, if
That
you
is
even go
such
back,
a that is such an important point you are raising and telling us about, because intermittent fasting is something which a lot of people are practicing and they are skipping on their breakfast. Um, Rightly, as you say, that we shouldn't skip breakfast. Does the time at which you have breakfast, is that important as well?
so technically 45 minutes after waking is a good time for us to eat anything. It can be if
Okay.
you think it's going to be delayed. So if
Mm-hmm.
I actually even look back at how environment has made a day, so there's a reason why we have morning, there's a reason why we have mid mornings, and then there's a reason why we have noon and evenings and dinner. So if
Right.
even if I look at basically a temple, they start their day early. They'll do the puja and they'll have their little breakfast. Then around 11 o'clock, they'll have nashta, then lunch at 1 o'clock, and then they'll rest. That's exactly how our body is trained. Even if I look back at how we've been groomed, like every one of us used to wake up at 5 or 6 in the morning because we have to go to school by 7, and 7 o'clock was something the little that you were eating. Then the next meal was given to you at 11 o'clock. Then the next meal was served at 1:30 or 2 o'clock by the time you were coming back home. That is how your body's been used to processing it. If
Mm-hmm.
you actually recall that even on Sundays, despite of eating your breakfast at 10 a.m., at 11 o'clock your body was probably looking for some food, because that's how your body's been trained. Even if I compare it now, like a lot of us are right after work from your office around 5:30, we usually eat some snacks. On the days that you've been home around 5-6 o'clock, you will automatically start looking for some food, maybe binging into your biscuits or anything that is available. Your body is not hungry, but your brain keeps telling you that let's eat. So for me, the right time for you to have breakfast is between 8 to 9 a.m. Your mid morning should be between anything between 10 to 12:30. Your lunch should be between 1 to 2. Your post meals can be anything between 4 to 5. Basically, 5 to 7 is the time when your body is producing a lot of cortisol. And that is the time when you should include a lot of soups or a lot of liquids. So, any drinks, even when we were kids, our parents used to give us milk in the evening, 1 glass of milk.
That's right.
So, any kind of liquid is something that helps us bind with that cortisol and gives us that satiety, and we should really do that. And then followed by dinner by 7:30, 8 maximum. Anything later than that is not really recommended, because your body will not have enough time to process it or to digest it, and you also need to give it that kind of time. Now when we talk about our ideal breakfast, what should be our ideal breakfast? It should be very good source of protein, certain amount of carbohydrates should come through it, and should have little amount of fats. So even again, if I compare it to region by region, most of the regions, the basic diet was parantha. Parantha is a good
Mm-hmm.
source of carb, but it was always accompanied with a lot of curd and white butter, because white butter is very, very healthy. It helps us make your stomach very alkaline. It kind of binds with your stomach juices, and it makes it uh, more alkaline in nature. Other good options for your breakfast can be a bowl of dalia, muesli, oats. Oats are very good. Eggs are excellent, and egg yolks is not something that are fattening. But yes, if you're combining only one egg and you're eating about 3 or 4 toast along with it, of course your carbohydrate count is much higher, your fat count is much higher, your sugar count is much higher. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're eating 2 whole eggs without the bread, taking a glass of milk on the side, this is absolutely a perfect meal. You do not need to worry about it. Now, in between your meals, we usually tend to snack. If our distribution of meals is very adequate, like you're having small breakfast, a very good lunch, and a very petty dinner, then in between you will have empty blocks. That is a time when you should snack. But whenever you're snacking, you should snack very smartly. The target is that we should not go beyond 200 calories or 150 calories for somebody who's on a weight watching diet. So that should be what you should be eating. Now when I talk about 100 calories, you can have 2 biscuits, you can have 1 toast of bread, or you can have 1.5 fruits. So like for an example, one apple weighs about 80 grams. So you can have slightly more than one whole banana will be almost 90-95 grams, but it'll give us 80 calories. But again, these are all packed. These are all good calories, but they're all packed with those essential nutrients such as magnesium, zinc, copper, which will help us keep the inflammation at a lower side. Sometimes you can also have one small piece of coconut. Now, coconut is usually considered as most fattening part in our diet, that it's high in calories and it is very fattening and we should avoid it, but that is not true. It is very, of course it's a high calorie snack, but again you'll have to control the portion. You will not be eating too much. In case if you're eating about 3 inches ka patla sa strip, that will give you better satiety and will also give you a lot of fiber. It is enriched with magnesium, zinc, copper, which is very essential for your bone health. And anybody who's complaining of constipation, this can be your best friend. This is really going to help you ease your constipation. Now, every time if you actually see, we usually as dietitians, we suggest that you should have a lot of proteins. The reason why we suggest proteins is because proteins gives you better satiety value. So it should be always eaten first. So amongst your khana, if you're eating only dahi, try and take a couple of bites of your dahi first, or have your dals. In case if you're taking millets in itself, it's a complete meal. You can have that. Protein helps our body burn fat faster, and so does fat helps our body burn fat faster. So, but you have to make the right amount, right decision. Like it has to be good quality fat, and the quantities have to be very limited. Now, healthy sources of proteins would include such as soybean, all dairy products, millets, chicken, fish, and whole eggs. Now, when we talk about whole grains, everybody talks to me like, I want to go gluten free, maybe because of the PCOS or maybe because of other reasons, such as a lot of people have menopausal symptoms coming up. So they always come back to me asking that, should we go gluten free or not? So for me, all whole grains are very good. Until and unless it is really causing you any kind of discomfort, I don't see a reason why you must avoid it. You should include it in your diet. So whole grains not only give you fiber, but they're also packed with your essential B vitamins. So and when you're, especially somebody who's a vegetarian, they should include roti once in a day, because that helps us bind B vitamin in your lower intestine. It does not let it get washed so easily. And the more you keep up with it, the probability for you to develop blood pressures or any other such discomfort in your stomach will be lowered. A lot of people complain about bloating. Of course, yes, gluten can irritate your stomach lining over a period of time and can cause bloating. But for the most part of it, in case if you're complaining of bloating, I would recommend that, you must get your iron levels checked. Sometimes the iron binding is so low that whatever little that you're eating, your body is not able to digest. In that case, we have to build up your iron levels, and then probably we have to reintroduce different kind of grains again. A lot of grains that are very good source of iron is basically millets. They're packed with a lot of nutrition. Iron is one of them. Amaranth is a great source, also called as quinoa. If we import it from outside, but the Indian native towards quinoa is amaranth. Uska chulai ka saag bhi aata hai. That's the summer saag that we call, and can be easily eaten by all. You can cook it into so many recipes. If you get the saag, you can blend it, you can knead it into your normal flour, you can add it to your yogurts and make dahi ke raita, or you can also make tikkis out of it. It comes out really well. Amaranth ki apne aap mein tikki bhi ban sakti hai, like how we make bajra and dal ki tikkis, exactly same way you can use amaranth in so many ways. You can ferment it and make dosas and idlis out of it, and its flavor is genuinely very nice. It's something that is acceptable by Indian palate, because you can mold it into so many recipes suiting to yourself. Now, a lot of people also talk to me that, we want to go without grains because we want to cut down on the carbs. Let's understand one thing. Carbohydrates is something that is present in everything that you eat, except poultry and fish or the non-vegetarian items. If we're talking about Indian vegetarian meals, carbs is something that is present in everything. Fat is another thing that is present in everything. That our millets, being calorie dense grains or have a lot of fat content, but their nutrient their nutrient calorie to nutrient ratio is very good. What does this mean is that, when we eat little fats, or when we eat normal gluten, or we eat normal carbs, our body uses a little to give out energy, and the remaining of it is stored as fats in our body. Whereas if you eat millets or any other super grain, your body will actually burn it, optimize the nutrient absorption in your body, and will flush out the rest. So it does not get stored as fat, and hence it helps us stay leaner, and also helps us create that balance. All your micronutrients your body is made in a way that will only hold up as much as it requires. So despite your body's requirement is going to be very low, we usually supply you a lot of extra nutrition throughout the day. And even if your doctors gives you multivitamins, they always give you a higher dosage, because the absorption does not happen every time. And sometimes probably your body does not need it, it might not absorb it, but after some time it might run deficit, so it'll look for it. So that is why every meal should be supplying certain amount of iron, calcium, magnesium, and zinc, and especially your B vitamins, because they're all water soluble vitamins, and they're all washed by as many times you'd be drinking water. Now, fiber, I've already spoken of that, these are the good sources of fiber, such as your millets, your whole grains. They not only help us feel full faster, but also adds that bulk to our stools that helps us pass stools regularly and consistently. For a lot of people who complain about constipation, either their fiber intake is too less or their fiber intake is too high. In case if it's moderate, then probably you have to check with your water volume. Sometimes what happens is it's your fiber is just resting on the colon, and it needs little water for it to be able to be passed down. Other laxatives in our diet is desi ghee. So 3 teaspoons of desi ghee every day for everybody is okay. But how you're going to balance it is that, you're taking desi ghee in your sabzis, you will not be adding it to your fulkas. You'll make sure that you're not including too many carbs in the form of biscuits or breads. All the vegetables that you're choosing to eat are again going to be a little leaner. You will not consume heavy pulses on that day when you're already consuming desi ghee. You can balance it in one way or the other. And by drinking a lot of water, again, it will become easier for you to pass stools. All veggies are very, very good, especially the seasonal vegetables, because they're actually, and especially the regional ones. So if I'm trying to grow something that grows way down south, our soil is not going to be so fertile that it'll be able to give us that right kind of nutrition. So I might be growing the vegetables here, but they'll not be of that higher quality of what it really should be. If you actually compare fruits also from other countries, for example, these days you're getting guavas. If you compare your Indian guavas with Thailand guavas, they are a lot different because they're more juicier, because that's how they've been, they can grow better there in their soil. But we should promote the ones that you get in India, because you would be able to reduce the economical effects on it, because we're not trying to add more manure or pesticides to all our fruits and vegetables, and we're actually eating what we can grow best here. You should eat rainbow colors. By rainbow colors doesn't mean that you should have 7 colors together in one plate, but throughout the day, try and include a lot of different kind of fruits and vegetables in your diet. The easiest way to use all your vegetables is to net them in your flour. Roz roti sab khate hain, उसमें डाल दो. In case if you're not all a roti eaters, you're more of a rice eaters, you can very well blend it in your rice. Or you can make chutneys out of it and keep it, something that can be used like a pesto. Or in case if you're all fond of Italian foods, the pestos can be prepared in so many ways. You can make walnut and spinach pestos, you can make beetroot and peanut pestos, you can make pumpkin, you can make actually sweet pumpkin pestos, you can make bhindi curries that can be easily made, something that everybody in the family will enjoy, papad curry. So the curry will have all the veggies, and on top of it, just to make it more regional, more flavorful, you can add a little bit of papad to it. and you can have it with rice, you can have it with any kind of millet, barnyard millet, samak rice, or amaranth, or any other millet that you would fancy. Now, the next most asked question to me is that, what kind of oil should I eat? Should I just eat in
That's a
desi?
that's a very common question.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you're right.
So a lot of people come up to me, should I start eating in coconut oil? Should I start eating only in desi ghee? Baki to sare rancid hote hain. Our body needs combination of all kind of fats. Saturated fats, that is your desi ghee, butter, or your mufa, that is your palm oil or coconut oil. We need balance of polyunsaturated fatty. Sanjeev Kapoor ki ad mein aata tha na, this is mufa rich, this is pufa rich. Our body needs combination of all kind of vegetables and oils. But what kind of oils? So vegetable oils should not be used for deep frying. It can make food rancid. But yes, for slow cooking, Indian cooking, we can use all kind of oils, all vegetable oil, be it mustard oil, rice bran oil, canola oil, sundrop oil, soybean oil. These all can be used for basic Indian cooking. Now, when we talk about extra virgin oil, they are more alkaline in nature. Similarly, coconut oil is also very alkaline in nature. We can use raw desiccated coconut in your cookings. But coconut oil also can be used in small quantities, not every day, but maybe once in 3 days. Or you can use coconut milk in your cooking. That helps us flush out toxins from our liver. But do not overdo it. It's always one small little spoon of oil in your diet. So in case if you're cooking for 4 people and you're using about 1 tablespoon of oil, automatically the food that you'll be getting will be made out of 1 teaspoon. That's the balance that I want you to have. So there is no such recipe of a perfect oil. In case you're adding desi ghee to your pulkas, you can cook your vegetables in on a low heat in any vegetable oil. I would recommend that we should keep changing our oils. So maybe one meal can be cooked in mustard oil, the other meal can be cooked in another vegetable oil, whatever you enjoy the taste and flavors for. Now, trans fats is something that is very essential and we should avoid it. We all get those fancy diet foods in the market, and we get a lot of low fat, low cholesterol butters, margarines, but they're very high in trans fat. They'll be very controlled in certain things, but if you actually read the labels very thinly, it says it's very high in trans fat, which can cause increase in your triglycerides, your body blood sugar levels, and your cardiac concerns can be they can actually spike up those concerns for us in your body. So you should be very careful. I do not recommend anybody consuming packaged foods until and unless it's really an emergency or you're extremely tired and you're out of time. You should not have it. So when I'm talking about not consuming packaged foods, not only the ones that we get, the frozen foods, I'm also referring to your puffed rice or your puffed wheats, the diet food that we're consuming. They're not probably high on fats, but they're very high on sodium intake. We do not realize when we overdo our sodiums in a day, and which can also lead to dehydration or imbalance of electrolytes in our body. Sometimes we do feel dizzy post that, or you'll keep feeling very thirsty, your body will keep demanding, or you suddenly feel that your fingers are shrinking, or you'll see that your feet are swollen. Now, a lot of people complain of water retention when they come up to me saying that our feet usually get swollen in the morning. Now, water retention, the word water retention itself is self-explaining, that your body is not getting enough water, and probably that is why it is holding up the whatever little water it has inside. The best way to fight it is by drinking water. In case if you feel that you're over drinking the water and still the water retention is not going, you need to check if you're eating proteins. So every meal should have one source of quality protein in diet. Now, which could be either one of them, dals, millets, doodh, dahi, paneer, or it can be any non-veg source that should be present in every meal that you eat. So your ideal plate should be one big plate. Jisme one portion goes to carbs, one to cooked vegetable or salad. In case if you can't prepare both, you will add it to your atta or you'll add it to your curd. And with it, there should be some chutney or achar and one source of proteins. When you're eating like this, there is no way that you'll be overeating any food, and you'll get you'll be so satiated, and then you won't crave for food later. A lot of people who usually start craving foods in the evening there's a link that there's a study that shows that, probably they're vitamin D deficient and hence they are craving for foods. But it is still not certain. You should check that. In case if that is not the concern, then you probably need to understand why the cravings are coming. Mostly the craving comes when you're micronutriently deficient. It could be B12, it could be calcium, or it could be vitamin D. Excess.
You were also going to tell us about the heroes of our kitchen.
Yeah.
Because if
Yes.
so,
I
if
was.
you could, because that is again a topic, where
Which
there
we
is so
really
much
want
of
to talk about.
information and there's so
Yes.
much of information and misinformation. So please tell
Right.
us about the heroes which we have in our kitchen and how we can use them to for a healthy diet.
Right. So ashwagandha is one of the most common heroes that I hear a lot about. In the earlier days, we used to only think that it is only related to fertility, and we used to just use it then. But actually, ashwagandha helps us fight stress. So anybody who's extremely stressed can have this. Anybody who's suffering from insomnia can consume this. It helps us reduce your cortisol levels. Over a period of time, you can actually see a dip in your belly fat. It helps us repair nerves and enhances strength to your nervous system. It improves your oxidation levels. So by that, all the athletes or somebody who's really into fitness and doing a lot of marathons, this is a natural way to increase the oxygen levels in your body. They usually look for other ways, increase the caffeine levels, but this is much healthier way. Now you get ashwagandha in forms of capsules. I don't recommend that because over a period of time, those capsules will have some certain kind of salt deposits in your body, which can do us more harm rather than doing us good. But instead, you can consume it in the form of powder. All you need to do is just add 1 spoon of ashwagandha powder in 1 glass of milk at bedtime. That's how it starts being utilized by your body. Now, another thing that I usually hear is Gond. Gond is mostly associated with lactating mothers, that, only lactating mothers should have Gond ke laddu. It is very good for them. And it improves milk production in them. That is true, but it is not fairly true. So Gond is fortified with proteins and calcium, magnesium. So calcium and magnesium plays a vital role in your bone health, and which makes it good food for your internal bones. As we age also, we can include 1 Gond ka laddu every day. But again, you have to understand, in the older days, these wisdom foods were used as proper meals. But right now what we do is we have the normal food, we'll include these foods, and we'll also eat something that we fancy eating, which becomes calorie dense. So you can replace one of your meals with this. It is very good for your skin, hair, and muscle building. So anybody who's actually trying to build muscles, Gond can be incorporated in many ways, except not only in the form of pinnies, but you can also add it to your cereals. You can also add it to your milkshakes, and you can make smoothies out of it, and you can consume it in different ways. It is very soothing for the stomach. Usually, when you eat so much of proteins or you're working out so much, that your body starts producing a lot of gastric juices. This helps us bind with that and does not give you a reflux. Coconut I've already spoken of. Then the next common is munakka. Munakka in the older days was given to older people because due to lack of movement, sometimes the gut used to become very stiff. Yes, it acts like a laxative. Again, it's a anti-reflux, something that you can use it, but not for diabetic patients. For diabetic patients, you can use dates instead of munakka. They both are a great source of iron, but high in fiber. All dry fruits mean they're dry in nature, and they will go inside and swell up and use all your water. So you need to make sure that you're adding more water in your diet. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is moringa. Moringa is the most spoken of these days. It's an Indian matcha leaves to us, and it is generally packed with a lot of nutrition. Specifically, all your B vitamins, just the folic acid is much higher in it. After moong dal, you can find it in this. This is for those people who are only trying to lose their belly fat, they can consume this twice or thrice in a day. Moringa is the only plant where we're not only using the fruit, we're also using its leaves and also using its roots in so many different ways. Moringa ka fruit is your drumsticks, and uski roots ka powder banta hai that you can use it. Moringa's fruit drumstick is again a great source of iron. It used to be poor man's food for some time. जैसे सत्तू को कहते थे, ऐसी for a lot of regions, drumsticks was also used as that. It was the easiest thing for us to feed a pregnant mother to make sure that her iron levels don't dip. So these days, how you can use it is you can slice it and make chips out of it, and then you can probably I usually use microwave, or you can also use do it in a non-stick pan and just make it crispy. You don't need to add any oil to it, and you can just kind of season it with pudina powder or probably any other masala that you prefer taking. Sauf is something that we've been eating after every meal, but without understanding what it really does. The thymol oil inside, which makes it taste, no, thymol nahi hai. Sorry, that's in carom. But the soft can, there's this oil that just goes inside and soothes your body. It again binds with all the juices. It acts like an anesthetic. It has an anesthetist effect in your body, which calm your nerves down and suddenly allows your body to work and makes it more digestion grain. So if you consume it before your main meals, it acts like an appetizer. If you consume it after your meals, it acts like a digestive food. It increases what we call it as pitta. Pitta is basically just increases your metabolic rate and enhances your digestion. Now, when we talk of carom sab sunta hai that garam hota hai, thoda khana chahiye, it can make your stomach dry. Similarly for hingoli also. But carom again comes from the thyme family as thymol. It has that fruity flavor, which is best suited for people who complain of IBS. IBS is, when you eat little and you suddenly want to, you get the urge to use the washroom. The moment you're coming out of the washroom, you'll be hungry again, or you'll always feel bloated, or you'll keep complaining of acidity reflux, you'll keep burping. So Sauf and carom can both be used alternatively, and they both help. Now the
Can you
last,
combine those two, and can you combine both of these, carom and as well as Sauf, and have it as a digestive at the end of your meal?
yes, you can, but
That's
but carom has a stronger pungent flavor. It can
Okay.
be, it can easily be blended into your veggies, or you can put it over your dahi or parantha so that it doesn't give you that aftertaste. Sauf is something that can be eaten anytime during the day. You can
Right.
also infuse water. So somebody who has a lot of reflux can actually make decoction of these different kind of spices and herbs separately. Sometimes you can just soak one small corner of cinnamon. Sometimes you can add black pepper. These are all diuretics. They all act like diuretics. They help you relieve bloating in your body and can be
Right.
used in so many ways. So anybody
I think we
during
can
the
have a session about using all these little kitchen masalas as diuretics and supplements which can get absorbed easily.
right. So for now, these are the ones that I was just about to pay more attention.
You're going to mention about black pepper as well, because that's
Right.
something
So
which
black
is used.
pepper is basically something that not only just add that little zing to your food, but it also act like a diuretic. Anybody who's complaining of that sudden water weight, like you've checked your weight today, it was 55, tomorrow it is 56. If you just soak about 2 whole black peppercorns in a bottle of water and you leave it for overnight and you start sipping on that water the next day, it helps us take that water weight down. Anybody who has migraines can actually keep 2 whole black peppercorns in their mouth and they keep sucking on it as a candy, you'll suddenly see that there's a relief. Basically, those migraines happen because of dehydration and due to loss of your basic electrolytes in your body. And black pepper is one of those that helps us restore it, and it can take care of it. Another place where I've seen that black pepper has really helped us is anybody who has sour throat. So anytime there is a change in weather, if you take about very small amount of black pepper powder, add it with a little bit of either almond oil or honey, and just drink it with a glass of lukewarm water. It really, really soothes your esophagus down and helps you flush the phlegm out.
Wow. I think we can go on, and there are
Rashi, we
lots
can
and
talk
lots of
about
different.
cinnamon as well. Cinnamon
Sorry?
is also very cinnamon powder. The cinnamon.
So cinnamon is basically a hormone regulator. So especially for somebody who has PCOS or has menopausal symptoms, or anybody who's growing up and has a lot of stress, it can be used by them. It is not only meant for women, it can be very comfortably used by all men and boys in the house also. Again, the idea is that you have to use all of these things in very small amounts. It shouldn't happen that you're boiling cinnamon over and over and over and over and over again and increasing the intake of it, because ultimately it's going to add into dehydration rather than doing us any good. So any of these spices or herbs that you use should never be more than half a teaspoon in a day. And it's only jeera, cumin, that is of thandi tasir. Again, it's a very good source of iron. And that is something that you can use about 1 tablespoon in a day, but rest all of them never more than half a teaspoon in a day, no matter what.
About methi also, methi dana.
Methi dana is has been used for years and years and years, saying that it is a very good source of antioxidants and flavonoids. It helps us fight with a lot of cholesterol problems or heart problems in our body, or anybody who has blood pressure should consume it. It's again a very good source of iron. It increases the iron flow to all different organs in your body. It helps us bind with the free flowing cholesterols in your body. It also helps us maintain your blood pressure, but not really. Blood pressure can be maintained in the presence of sodium and potassium. So in case if you have high BP, then you should include coconut and coconut water. If you have low BP, then you must include lemon water with a lot of salt, or you should consume carbohydrates so that you're able to maintain B12 in your body. Now, coming back to methi, gives not only a positive side for cardiac, and not only helps us fight cardiac problems, diabetes and blood pressure slightly, but also helps us ensure that you have a glowing skin and a very good texture of your hair. So a lot of mothers, when during the rainy seasons, you will actually see that there's a lot of hair fall that is happening. That is the time when you can start including methi. But again, the thing is that you should never have more than half a teaspoon. Our Indian food is so rich. We use a lot of spices and herbs otherwise also. So overdoing it can make it worse rather than doing us good. You can make paste out of it. You can apply it on your hair. You can apply it on your face. It just gives that extra strength and volume to your hair.
Thank you so much. I think we can just be sitting here for the next 2 hours listening to all that you have to tell us, because it just makes so much of sense when you put it like that. But what will happen is we've heard you, and then tomorrow or day after we'll read something, and then we'll go into this little tizzy, not understanding what to do. But thank you so much for taking time out and educating us. And these simple things we know and we've seen over a period of time, our grandmothers adopt and our mothers use, and somewhere along the line we've got confused. So thank you for bringing us back to the path of sanity. There are lots of questions here, so with your permission, let me just read them out, and then you can take them.
Yes,
This is
sure.
a question which says, what is the equivalent, Indian equivalent of couscous? This is from Sheila Kohli.
So couscous is an Indian, it's also grown in India. The poppy seeds is something that you can use as couscous here. That is,
You can use that.
Yes.
Okay.
But amaranth and couscous or any other millet that you can locally find is as good as each other. It's just that couscous takes little lesser time to cook, whereas amaranth will take a little more time and more water. But apart from this, in the nutritional point of view, amaranth is much higher in proteins, much higher in iron in comparison to couscous.
Interesting question. Can you please explain why you should not skip breakfast?
Because your body, when you start your car, you usually give little extra accelerator, and you try to churn it so that that extra pull of petrol comes into the main engine and it kind of helps it run smoothly and better. It's the same way how your body needs that little push in the morning. You don't need a very big breakfast. In the earlier days, we should talk about, eat like a king for your breakfast, and then eat like a knight in the lunch, and then for your dinner, you should eat like a pauper. But we don't really talk about that anymore. We always suggest that your lunch should be the biggest meal so that it can cover for what you've missed out in the morning and also lends through your next meal. What happens is in the morning, usually in the state of rush, your brain is not even really giving you the signal that you're hungry, but you need that little calories for you to just make sure that your day starts smoothly. It is very important for your brain health. Otherwise, you'll be very cranky. Observe it for yourself also certain days that if you start skipping by 12 o'clock, you're just you're always in a rush to start your day and to get to work. And once you settle down after your meetings, that's that real time you suddenly start feeling hungry. You tend to overeat, or you're so grumpy and you're so irritable by that time that you don't even understand. Then you'll probably just go on drinking a lot of coffee, just torturing your system inside, which is not fair.
And the second part of that question was, please elaborate on the benefits or the ill effects of intermittent fasting.
So benefits of the intermittent fasting is that it helps us use the stored fats, especially in your upper intestine and the skin below it. It helps us lose that fat. And honestly, there is not much that proves that it is effective. Any change that you bring in your pattern will show you results for a couple of months, and beyond that, it becomes a habit for your body. Similarly, when I talk about ill effects, for a lot of people, it is very beneficial because their metabolic rate works in the, we have phases. For a lot of us, it is during the day we have the highest production time. For a lot of people, it is the night time when they're more productive. So for them, when they do intermittent and they're active in the night, their body is burning much faster. But whereas for others, it is more active in the day and they're burning more faster. So for people whose body is much more active in the day and they're starving that active time when their body needs, it goes into a very numb place where it starts storing a lot of food rather than helping you lose that fat. It kind of stores it as fats in your body. It starts creating those stores because it has gone in a state of starvation and does not know when is the next meal going to come and how will it produce enough energy for you to carry out your day-to-day actions.
How does one know about the intermittent fasting? I mean, how does one know morning fasting, evening fasting, night fasting?
So there are ways to find out. There are a lot of genetic tests that you can get done where you can get to know about, is your metabolic rate more active in the morning, or is it active in the night, or is it active in the evenings? But the best way to do it is something that I think that if you've grown up waking up in the morning at 6 or 7 and you start your day by 7:30, 8 o'clock, I think you should have your breakfast then and you should skip your dinner. That'll be much more ideal. But in case if you think that it becomes very difficult for you to skip dinner, I don't really recommend anybody skipping their breakfast. So it can be something as small, but yeah.
Okay. You've spoken about the benefits of coconut. So it's a question which was related with that. What about coconut water? And should a person who is obese consume coconut water?
Absolutely, you should consume coconut water. Coconut water doesn't have anything to do with you being fat. Any food that you eat has fat. So it's not that we're asking you to starve. It is just about creating that right amount of balance. But in fact, drinking a coconut water also gives you a lot of sodium and potassium, which act like a diuretic. So every time you drink tea, coffee, or you drink sodas, or you drink coconut water, the urge for you to use the washroom increases, which means it helps you flush out toxins. It has absolutely nothing to do with anything else. If you're worried about calories, it is not as high on calories if I compare it to 1 glass of Coke or 1 glass of any juice. This is much preferred drink.
Okay. Some view that milk and milk products are not good for seniors. Is that correct?
So beyond a point, your body stops digesting lactic acid that is present in milk. So they're not able to digest milk better, but they're okay to digest it in different forms, such as, yogurt is much comfortable for them to consume, or probably paneer. So it is, in case if it is troubling you, yes, you should start avoiding it. But over a period of time, also we recommend that, you should not be consuming any kind of dairy product more than 500 ml a day. So be it your dalia, be it doodh, dahi, paneer, everything should come from half a liter. Half a liter is quite enough. In case if you're overdoing it and that is what is causing acid reflux, that can be monitored. In case if you're still not able to take it at all, then yes, you have other alternatives that are available, such as oat milk, which can be a good part in your diet. The protein absorption from oat milk is much higher in comparison to any nut milk, be it almond milk or be it cashew nut milk. I personally would prefer an oat milk.
So is it better to have oat milk than almond milk?
Yes, it is much more nutritious, much more healthier, and
Okay.
yes, almond milk is
Right.
only good source of your micronutrients, but does not give you any kind of proteins. But oat milk will give you lesser proteins, but that protein is going to be highly absorbed. It's the nutrient to calorie ratio is much higher.
Right. That's very interesting to know because, lots of people have switched from regular milk to almond milk. So that's interesting to know. There was this question about sprouts. Is it good to have sprouts for breakfast? Is that the best time to have sprouts or any other time of the day?
No, sprouts is good enough for breakfast. You can have it any point of time. It can be used as a snack. It can be added to a lot of other things. You can make paranthas out of sprouts. You can make tikkis out of sprouts, or you can just have sprouts as it is. But just in case if that's the first thing in the morning that you're having, make sure that you boil it really well so that the fiber breaks faster and does not give you an acid reflux.
Okay. Can amaranth be used, can be soaked and used like couscous?
So couscous, you don't need to soak it because couscous is something that gets ready in 5 seconds. Literally, if you just kind of warm it in a microwave, it will be cooked. Amaranth is more or less cooked like quinoa or like rice. In case if you're soaking it, then you need to add little lesser water and boil it. And in case if you're just not soaking it and you're just boiling, you just need to add double the amount of water and put it in cooker and just cook it.
Okay. I think we were talking about butter, the white butter. There is a question related with that. How is Amul butter? Is Amul butter the same as having white butter?
Yeah, we have to just believe whatever they say. It's hard to not believe them. They have the FSSAI approved marks on it. So yes, I would go with Amul butter.
There is a question which says, can we have ashwagandha and gond in water?
Ashwagandha, if you have it with water, there is nothing wrong about it, but it does not get digested or assimilated so well. It has to bind with certain kind of fat. That is why we recommend that you should have it with milk. You can probably have like 100 ml of milk, not a whole cup of milk, but technically it is best absorbed in the presence of fat. And in case if you still insist that no, I can't have that, you can add a little bit of desi ghee to it, maybe like 1/4 teaspoon, and then you can add it to your lukewarm water and have it.
Okay. How much moringa does one need to have in a day?
So moringa, you can have a lot of recipes you can cook, like how we add curry, but tampered in our food. Same way you can use moringa. Or in case if you're taking moringa powder, 1 teaspoon twice in a day is more than enough. In case if you're overweight, in case you're an adequate weight, then once in a day is also more than enough.
And when is the good time to have the moringa powder?
Usually the best time for you to have moringa is around evening. That is the time when your body starts producing cortisol. That's the time when you should have all kind of healthy fats also. So avocado, your walnuts, your flax seeds, pumpkin seeds should come anytime between 4 to 5:30.
It should come as an afternoon snack rather than having it.
It's more like a green tea. So you'll have moringa as a green tea. Alongside that, you can have 2 whole walnuts, or you can have 1 spoon of pumpkin seeds or flax seeds. So something like that. Yes, you can use it as a snack. In case if you're more hungry, then you can probably binge into some kind of protein.
Many people soak almonds and have it in the morning. Is that something good? Is that something
it's a healthy practice. The only reason why almonds were soaked was mainly given to pregnant mothers because they act like antacids. The moment you soak it in water, it just kind of makes it more easy for your body to digest it. Doesn't have to work harder. Now, the
Mm.
idea is that, when we soak almonds, is we take about half a glass of water and we drop in like 4 or 5 almonds, and we throw away the water. You lose out water soluble vitamins in that water. Either you drink that water, but it's so mitti wala that you can't drink it. So the best way to do it is that you soak in just about the right amount of water that your almonds swell up in that water, and there's not much of water that is left behind. So maybe 4 or
Okay.
5 almonds would require about a tablespoon of water, nothing more than that.
That's a very useful tip because many people, soak almonds and have it. And should one continue having it in the morning, or then is like this 4, 5 o'clock time a better time to have the
Almonds is
almonds?
something you can have any time of the day. Almonds
Oh,
you can
wonderful.
have it any time of the day.
Okay.
The reason why they were
This,
given in the morning were mainly for the pregnant ladies, because at that point in time we did not have any antacid tablets. So this was used
okay.
as an antacid. This or coconut, they both act like antacids.
Wow. One would never, think of that, almond is being given as an antacid. This is regarding banana. Are bananas good both for constipation and loose motion?
Yes.
And also, do lemon become alkaline when dissolved? There are 2 questions there. So
Sorry,
first is
lemon
about
becomes
banana.
what? What was the second question?
Alkaline.
No, lemon is not
Alkaline
alkaline. Lemon is not
once it is
alkaline.
dissolved in water or once it's taken in, does it become alkaline?
No, it doesn't become alkaline. Its properties
Okay.
stays the same, but vitamin C consumed in different forms, like, probably in different fruits and different vegetables, will be more alkaline in nature. For example, when it's consumed in the form of banana, it binds in the other micronutrients or the other properties of banana binds in the stomach, which makes it more alkaline. But lemon in itself is not alkaline in nature. Now, banana is very good, yes, if eaten one, it kind of stabilizes the stomach. If eaten too many together, it can result in diarrhea. So when you have loose motions, we give you 1 banana. It helps you bind the stomach. But if we're giving you too many, it will add more because it has too much of copper, it has too much of fiber, which will exert a lot of pressure on the gut and result in loose motions. It's the same way with isabgol. When you consume it with milk, it becomes like a laxative. When you have it with curd, it becomes a binding agent.
And if you have isabgol with water?
It is a laxative. It just kind of helps you release it better.
Okay. Thank you very much for an excellent session. This is from Sheila Kohli. There is a question regarding garden cress seeds. What is your take on garden cress seeds? How much should one take?
So
a
all
day?
kind of seeds, never more than 1 tablespoon. All seeds are very good. The chia or sabza and pumpkin, of course, ace the ladder because of the protein quality. And chia can be replaced to eggs. So somebody who's a vegetarian can actually get their egg protein through chia also. The binding is such. But all seeds, and usually I recommend that you should always mix the seeds so that you get the benefits of all in a day, but never more than 1 tablespoon of any kind of seeds whatsoever.
Okay. Why do some people need midnight meals? What is your view on this?
So a lot of people who actually require midnight meals are the ones who start their day very late. Probably they're starting their day only at 1 o'clock. Their sleep cycle is disturbed. They do not sleep till 3 or 4 in the morning. And when they sleep at 4 in the morning, of course, they'll have a late start. And that is how they spread their 6 meals ending at midnight, which is not something which is very healthy or recommended, because you're actually playing with your own hormones and your lifestyle. There's a reason why you need to discipline yourself back and not eat after 8 o'clock in the night, because your body needs that resting period. But when we talk about not eating, does not allow you to stay up and not eat. You also have to sleep so that your body can rest. But that midnight craving is only because of the lifestyle. And in case if that is not happening, there's a lot of people sleep and they wake up especially to eat. Probably they're some vitamin D deficient, or they'll be probably not eating enough throughout the day. They'll be eating scarcely and then they'll be eating. So there could be multiple reasons. Until unless I actually speak to them in person, I will not be able to identify it for them.
Okay. Again, there is a question about intermittent fasting. I think somebody must be very keen to understand more about it. In intermittent fasting, the body starts using fat as a source of energy and later getting into autophagy post 14 hours of fasting. Need your comment on intermittent fasting effect from point of view of body repair, not weight loss.
So for body repair, 14 hours is something that we all usually do. 12 hours is minimum. You finish your meal at 7:30, you start your day next day 7:30, and you'll be having your first meal by 8 or 9. So 14 hours is very normal, and this is something that your body really requires. But anything beyond this is not a healthier way to help your body repair. If this is the question that you're trying to ask.
Okay. I think, does anybody else have any questions which they would like to ask Rashi? Because we are running short of time now. One or two questions, otherwise we can say thank you to her. Anybody would like any questions, to ask any questions? Okay.
Is beer healthy?
Sorry?
I thought you would come up with that. Is beer a healthy drink? We have to answer that and then close the session, because I think Jaggi Malhotra would like a beer to end the evening or start the evening.
Thank you very much.
Beer is it's an alcoholic drink, so it leaches out a lot of vitamins from your body. So rather than again doing us any kind of good, it adds to bloating, it adds to higher sugar levels. So from my side, it's not healthy. Beer is a no-no.
Oops, that was not the answer he was expecting.
Sorry, I really couldn't say anything else.
Thank you, Rashi, for a very, very educative, informative, and a session where you've been able to, clarify many misconceptions which we have. Thank you for doing that, and we do hope we can have you back again soon, telling us more and re-educating us and reminding us of the simple things which we can follow, and make ourselves healthy and lead a healthy life. I would like to thank Rosewalk Hospital for helping us organize this session with Rashi, who's the clinical nutritionist there. I would also like to add that before following any diet, please do take medical advice. Do not, take the step and start following a diet just by listening to what you're hearing. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure to have you as part of our audience, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Till then, stay safe, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Sanna. Thank you everyone for being such patient listeners. And in case if you would need, if you have more doubts or questions, I'm sure you can reach out to Sanna. Sanna will guide them.
We will share your email address as well as your contact details. If anybody would like to reach out to you, they can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Rashi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.